What is going on, Tenda Crew? My name is Billy the Squid, and today I want to go through and look at the top 10 things that I found the most enjoyable about the Elden Ring Gameplay Preview. It just happened. I've been watching it a few times over after the live showcase, and I'm very, very excited about this game. And I want to show you guys exactly why with my top 10 favorite things from the Gameplay Preview. So let's get right on into it, shall we? So the first thing that came to mind was the landscapes, the skyboxes, and all of like the environmental aspects. The world feels very much alive, and I'm happy to be able to say that. As you can see, like in this area, it's a big open field, nice lush and stuff, but there is a air of like darkness to it. You have this NPC here. We did not interact with them, so we don't know what they do specifically, but they have a ray shining on them as if they might be something important. But if we go back and kind of look at the landscape as a whole, you have these people crucified up on posts. As your character is jumping down through, you have some abandoned structures. You have a ton more of these crucified people down throughout the field. It's both beautiful and disturbing in the same time. And throughout this gameplay preview, they give us a look at a bunch of different landscapes that we are going to be lucky enough to go through. And I feel like it's got a good amount of variation compared to what one might expect from a game such as this. So come from an open world. My biggest issues with stuff like Bethesda Skyrim and such is that the environments get a bit too samey. But as far as we're seeing here, it may have a day-night cycle. It may have a weather cycle. I'm not 100% confirmed one way or the other at that. But even if it doesn't, there's enough environmental variation from point to point that it keeps things fresh and exciting. As you can see here, we have kind of a dusk scene with this dragon. The water physics actually look really good. Just a lot of really nice environmental cues. As you can see also with this fight, there's a dragon egg in the middle of this pond. That is most likely what this dragon is defending, if I had to venture a guess, which is very, very cool. There's another one off in the distance there that you can see. Very interesting indeed. And we have a full night mode with this raid that they did here. It's got some rain going through with it. As we were driving up to this encampment, there's actually a lightning storm that was taking place. I think these runes mark maybe where the lightning is actually going to strike, so you don't have to worry about like random lightning strikes. It's just like a set area that you can tell lightning is going to come down here. Maybe you can lure enemies into this lightning storm and get an advantage on them. It's neat that there's an environmental cue and it's not just like random lightning shooting down that you have to like deal with. I like the less randomness of it. We also had a look inside at the catacombs and in the legacy dungeons. The architecture for both very different from one another. It is very, very exciting. I'm interested to see how these legacy dungeons and how these more catacomb style mini dungeons actually differentiate. Because again, like with Bethesda style open world games or Ubisoft style open world games, once you get like, there's the cave, there's the crypt, and then there's another like maybe ice cave. And that's kind of it. You kind of rotate through. Yes, the landscapes inside are different, but it all kind of gets a little samey after a while. I'm interested to see how Elden Ring differentiates that and how much variety there actually is within not only the legacy dungeons, because I have a feeling there's going to be quite a bit of variety with those, but the mini dungeons and open world dungeons as well. Number 2 that got me really excited about this game coming out is the focus on NPCs. I don't know if every NPC that you come across in this game is going to feel as meaningful as these NPCs do, but it seems like they are very much pushing for a more narrative-driven game, which having George R.R. Martin on board building lore and stuff makes a lot of sense. But I hope that every NPC has this air of importance to them. I hope every NPC gets their time to shine so that it's not just like 2 or 3 that are stealing the spotlight and the rest are just randoms, like your hag merchants and stuff like that. We have Mr. Potboy here, who very easily stole the show, if you ask me. But we also had quite a few other NPCs that I feel are worth noting. Obviously, we have our maiden for the game that you'll be able to summon at any of the graces. She looks very nice. I very much enjoy her character model. It has a nice like combination almost of the doll plus a firekeeper look to her. I enjoy the tattooed across the eye. I'm assuming that's going to be built upon within the lore, but very good character design there. We also have NPCs that you might think as lesser NPCs, and it very much seems like they are, but even him, he has his own breadth of personality to him where he's helping you get through either the main gate or the side path, going to give you your options. But he is an enemy. Like, his character model is used for enemies later in the game. Kind of like what happened in Dark Souls 3's last DLC, where the Lucas Priest, there's one NPC, Lucas Priest, that kind of rambles on about some stuff and things, and then the Lucas Priests are enemies later. I get that vibe from him, but I feel like he's done significantly better. He actually has, there's interaction there, whether it be ignoring him and going the main path or going the side path that he brings up. And he raises the gate up for you. It's very, very cool that even such a minor NPC, or one that you would assume is a minor NPC, gets his moment to shine. Finally, we had Mr. Big Hat Boy here. I'm happy to say the Big Hat returns, of course, with a mage character, but it's all very good. It's all very good. They all seem to be very interactive. He has a reason for being here, just like you have a reason for being here. It's not just acquiring vendors. They actually exist within this world. And I think that's really nice. Some of the NPCs in other From Software games felt a bit random. These guys feel very, very in tune with the world itself. Number 3 on things I am excited about, and it was something that wasn't even touched upon. We do have the item crafting, which we all knew was going to be in the game. You're going to be able to pick up plants. You're going to be able to kill animals for parts and make arrows, consumables, stuff along the like. That's all very nice. But up above me is the biggest thing that I was excited about, and it's the stat screen. So I kind of want to give a breakdown, and I'll probably give a deeper breakdown on this later. But the stats that we have, runes are going to be your souls, as you can see, runes held. You have vigor, which I'm assuming is going to be your health. Mind, which is a completely new stat. I'm assuming that's going to be like attunement, since you have memory slots. Mind, I'm assuming, is going to be linked to that. You also have endurance, strength, dexterity, intelligence, faith, all of the usual stuff. But instead of luck, they've gotten rid of luck. We have an arcane stat, which I'm curious to see what that is going to be about. We've had some conversation about mana systems and the FP systems in these games. I want to know how they are planning on divvying up, because as you can see directly behind my head, FP is still a thing. You have your HP, your FP, and your stamina. So those are all still present, as well as equip load. It actually tells you what load you have. Your discovery, it has a poise. Poise is actually a number, and we'll talk about why poise is a finicky topic in Souls games in a later video. And then you have your memory slots. So mind, I'm assuming, is going to be linked to those memory slots, but perhaps arcane will be linked to your FP bar. Maybe that will be a stat for moving your FP bar forward. Or maybe FP increase is going to be split amongst a few different stats. One thing that was brought up is that FP being linked to mind specifically does not make a lot of sense, especially if you don't plan on using spells. If you are in a pure weapon build, having the attunement slots open doesn't do anything for you. It could potentially do something for you, but if you're not speccing into those intelligence or faith or whatever arcane is, you're not going to get use out of the spell slots, and you're just dumping points into a stat for half of its value. So I would like to see them rework the FP system. Only time will tell on that. But I was very excited to see the stat screens and seeing that there's a little bit of change up going on. Very exciting. The fourth thing that has me excited about Elden Ring is the map system and how it works. Now, we didn't get any HUD elements here. We don't see where our health bar, stamina bar, if there's that compass is in the game. But we do up above us have a northwest, south, and east. So I'm assuming that the compass will be in the game. Also, I just noticed here, right behind me is your day-night cycle. So there is a day-night cycle in the game. Whether a weather cycle exists is still up in the air, but we at least have confirmation that there is a day-night cycle in the game there. Bringing it back to the map, because I think the map is beautifully well done, there are a ton of map markers that you can mark specifically things that you want. You have animal, you have plant, you have NPCs, you have really hard areas, and then you have maybe mark an area for grinding and stuff. Treasures that you haven't gotten to. Maybe this could be for like marking a covenant spot or whatnot. You have markers for all sorts of different things. One thing I'm curious about is if you're able to mark multiple of the same marker into the map at the same time. That is something I'm interested in. We will see if that is the case. It shows that you can put at least different markers down, as we have 2 markers put down here. And then whenever you leave the map, you actually get to see that ray of light radiating up from the sky. That is very cool. I think it's much better done here than what Breath of the Wild does. You can actually see it off in the distance where it's specifically sitting. It doesn't give you like a big area. It's a very pinpoint spot, which I think is very, very useful. Number 5, and thank you if you have made it this far in the video, you are at the halfway point. Congratulations. Number 5 of things I'm excited about with Elden Ring is the option for verticality. The jump button actually adds a ton of scope that you can do, where you can do stuff like this. You can jump up on stuff that might not have been even conceivable as accessible in other games. This could get you a drop down on some enemies. The jump button is going to completely change how the maps are built. And I think From Software, from what we have seen here, with the snippets of these dungeons that we have seen, they have fully implemented that jump button into their world design. And I think we're going to get a lot of exploration opportunities with that, and a lot of potential routes to get through these dungeons that weren't possible before without the jump button. Very, very exciting. Number 6 of the things that got me excited in this trailer was the way Graces work and the mounted combat. I'm going to kind of do a double feature here, but Grace is actually sending rays of light off into important directions, gives you at least a head on where to go. You can see where the Grace is going. You can kind of look out into the distance and see if there's anything important out that way, and then have a head to go to. It takes a little bit of the random variable out of where you're supposed to go, while still giving you the option to go wherever the hell you want, because it doesn't actually matter. Also, the mounts. The mount itself, I think, is going to be very, very impressive. I think the mounted combat, specifically, looks very well done. The fact that they have very consistent magic attacks going on, as well as sword-based combat, and I'm assuming a breadth of other combat types, is going to be very, very exciting. I am curious to see how the enemies are balanced around mounted combat, specifically like these world bosses and stuff, whether it is actually beneficial to stay on your mount for most of the fight, or if getting off and fighting will become the meta, or if the enemies are actually able to knock you off of your mount and force you onto the ground. That would be an interesting mechanic as well. So while you're not being hit, you have that kind of mobility bonus, but as soon as you get hit, it's a one-on-one on the ground. Very cool, very exciting. And speaking of sorceries, number 7 brings me to how good the spell animations look. Spell animations in the Souls games were some of the most janky things we have seen in most video games. Holding a staff up and a beam of light coming out of it never really did it well for me. These actually look extremely well done. There's some finesse to those catalyst strikes. There is a lot of beautiful particle effects going on, both with enemy attacks and your own attacks. And I feel like magic is going to be a lot more appealing, not just from a standpoint of, say, cheesing enemies from a range, but I feel like it's actually going to be better suited for weaving in and out melee to mage to melee to mage. But it does look like pure mage combat should at least be possible, depending on how the FP system works. Very excited about the new magic systems. It all looks very, very smooth. Backtracking a bit to the catacombs and world dungeons, number 8 is the world dungeons. As you can see, the ray of lights kind of leads you to a grace within this world dungeon. And these things have me very excited, but also slightly concerned. They could get very boring. They could get very monotonous. Depending on how they have them sectioned out, I could see it very well being like typings, like a catacomb dungeon, a cave type dungeon, and those could get potentially stale. I almost get a chalice dungeon feel from these open world dungeons, like handmade versions of chalice dungeons. So maybe they could be taking elements that are going to be kind of interspersed within these open world dungeons, but they're going to be more finely created for the open world gameplay, because it's not going to be procedurally generated like what the chalice dungeons were. I would not be opposed to there being a dungeon creator system or potentially a chalice dungeon style system where you can go to a shrine of some point and it will procedurally generate a dungeon of a specific type for you. I think that would be pretty cool, but only time will tell if that's even being thought of. Number 9 of things I'm excited about is kind of a two-parter. And one of it is the sleep status effect and new status effects being added in general, along with the stealth system. I think this is going to give a very different way of playing the game, depending on a playstyle. It opens up an entire range of playstyle for you to be able to do. As you can see there, you were able to sleep somebody, then walk up and execute them, jump attack the next guy, the headshot put him into repostable, and then you finish him off. As well as weapon arts. In this trailer, I don't know if weapon arts are going to be as freely used as they are in this trailer, but it seems very much like weapon arts either might not cost FP or be significantly dumbed down on the FP cost, or we have a method of recharging FP that allows for you to be more able to use these moves. New combat mechanics in general is what this is going to be brought on. We have the Twin Blade. We have the Spirit Summons, where you're actually able to equip at graces different groups of summons to be able to bring into combat with you. It's all very exciting. So far, we don't see power stancing, which I was disappointed with, but we still have the akimbo-style weapons being available. So we'll see. Only time will tell how that goes. But I really want to focus in on the weapon arts, because we saw a lot of weapon arts throughout this trailer. We had this weapon art from the scimitar where we threw wind at this enemy and it executed them. You later see this being used by enemies later, so that's kind of a cool callback where you're actually using the spells and the weapon arts that the enemies are using. I like that. And then you have this cool flip and then return in. It kind of cloaks you as you return, so really, really neat weapon art there. This forest was a perfect showcase of the stealth elements, not only for being offensive with them, but also defensive. I think this is really cool, and I hope that more areas like this utilize the stealth in a constructive way and not just as a method of cheesing. This weapon art here blew me away whenever I first saw it. The being able to summon skeletons from that axe was really, really neat. Coming up here, you actually see this swordsman here using that wind blast that we saw earlier. And then we see this claymore doing a Sekiro-style blood sweep like what the Mortal Blade did in Sekiro. Almost a katana-style move being used with a claymore. Thought that was really, really cool. During this boss fight here, we also see the weapon parry and then counterattack that you can do. It's more of a deflect, really. You guard with your weapon, and then you're able to go back in for a counterattack if you are blocking with a weapon specifically. We see the player actually buffing their weapon at the start of this fight as well. Don't know if that is a consumable or a spell. Most likely you'll be able to do both. And then we also have this neat weapon art with the claymore being charged up with holy power or magic power or whatever it is. And this weapon art I actually want to focus on a little bit more because I find it very interesting. It almost seems like it is a charge-based move. Like the longer you hold it, the stronger it gets. Almost as if you would be able to release it early to get a lesser version of it. It seems like it has two tiers, like a standard tier and then a super tier, and then you slam down. Very cool if that is going to be the case. I can see there being applications for both of those. But the last thing that I want to mention is the bosses. As you can see here, we have the final boss that they showed in the showcase. This is one of the demigods from the Legacy Dungeon. But there was a lot of bosses shown off, and I am very excited to say that all of them looked very, very good. He has a very Bloodborne-esque moveset to him, very unique moveset, honestly, which, given how many arms he has, and at some point during the fight, he goes from just using regular attacks to actively ripping that head off of the dragon corpse and using it to fight with. I think that is very, very neat. So there's going to be phase-based combat at the very least. This guy blew me away too. I got Sekiro vibes at first just because that was the first game where we had a boss on horseback. I'm glad to see that bosses on horseback are returning. This is more of a chunky boy with a power weapon coming up. His horse actively does attacks as well. Mounted world bosses are going to be very cool, and I feel like it's going to give a good option, another option at the very least, for what we can see and expect from boss design. And then bringing it back to the start, we get the world boss of this dragon coming through, smashing through all of those dudes. There's eggs all around. I'm assuming they are defending the egg. This dragon boss was very, very neat. We've seen another dragon boss in the trailers with the dragon that summons the lightning beam that they actually throw down like lightning stake. This boss, while it definitely shares a lot of aspects to Midir and the way the Dark Souls dragons work in general, I feel like has enough uniqueness to it, both from a design standpoint and from how it attacks, that it's not a copy pasta, and I feel like it will stand up with the rest of the dragons. From always has issues making dragons vary from one another. I think this is a good attempt at that. But yeah, that is the 10 things from the gameplay preview that got me the most excited about Elden Ring. Stay tuned to the channel for more info about Elden Ring. I'm going to be deep diving a few more topics of the gameplay preview on this channel, so subscribe to the channel if you are interested in more of that. But until next time, Tenta Crew, I will talk to you all later. Much love.